Anticipating hope. Let me first say that I'm indebted to a number of scholars for their insights as I prepared this address for today. Lutheran theologian Karl Bratton, French theologian Jacques Ellul, German theologian Jürgen Moltmann, and intellectual Terry Eggleton, and psychologists Dennis O'Hara and C.R. Snyder. The great German theologian of last century, Emil Brunner, once wrote, "What oxygen is to the lungs, so is hope for the meaning of life. Hope means the presence of the future, or more precisely, it is one of the ways in which what is merely future and potential is made vividly present and actual to us. Hope is the positive, as anxiety is the negative mode of waiting for the future. Through anxiety and hope, we relate ourselves to the future in passive expectation." An illustration of that statement occurred in the life of Dr. Martin Luther King. During the Montgomery bus boycott, carpools were organised to get workers to their jobs. It ran for 11 months, but now looked as though it would not be able to continue. Martin Luther King went one night to address his congregation in Montgomery to break the news. And this is what he said. "When evening came, I mustered sufficient courage to tell the truth. I tried, however, to conclude on a note of hope. We had moved all of these months in the daring faith that God is with us in our struggle. The many experiences of days gone by have vindicated that faith in a marvellous way. Tonight, we must believe that a way will be made out of no way." Next day, in anxiety and hope, Martin Luther said, "I read these words in the court release. The United States Supreme Court today unanimously ruled bus segregation unconstitutional in Montgomery, Alabama. My heart throbbed with inexpressible joy," he said. "The darkest hour of our struggle had become the first hour of hope and victory." The three so-called theological virtues of faith, hope, and love all have their corollaries, of course. Faith is likely sometimes to lapse into credulity, love into sentimentalism, and hope into self-delusion. Indeed, it's hard to say the word hope without evoking the prospect of hope being dashed. The former US President Bill Clinton once linked the virtues of faith and hope together when he said this, "I still believe in a place called Hope," a reference to the town in Arkansas where he grew up. If he had changed what he had said to, "I still believe in a place I love called Hope," he could have neatly combined all the three theological virtues. There are two ways of understanding hope. One is as a noun. As a noun in the Oxford Dictionary, hope is a feeling of expectation and a desire for a particular thing to happen. Another feature of hope as a noun is that it must have an object. There is a hope of something happening. If we believe that hope already exists objectively, then we can seek hope, and hope can grow or diminish. If hope can grow, then human effort can make a difference. Hope, however, as a verb, is the act of desiring, of having confidence, of believing or trusting in someone or something. Hope as a verb introduces the idea of a subject. That is, there is someone doing the hoping. Hope as a verb, the actional dimension is personalised, providing more power to the individual to choose the object of hope. Terry Eglinton, in his book Hope Without Optimism, gives a brief summary of Christian and other thinkers who are writing about hope. St. Augustine, in one of his books, writes, "There is no love without hope, no hope without love, and neither hope nor love without faith." Sigmund Freud, in his book The Future of an Illusion, views religious hope as a nurse recounting fairy tales to a child and wishes to purge the world of such consoling fictions. The developmental psychologist Erik Erikson regards hope, which is first seen in the infant's trust in its parents, as both the earliest and the most indispensable virtue in being alive. For many thinkers down through the centuries then, delusion rather than hope is the dynamic of human experience and existence, and this is to be affirmed or lamented depending on whether we strive for hope or accept the self-deceit. So what can we say about hope from a Christian perspective? The Lutheran theologian Karl Bratton writes that the Christian gospel can expect to get a hearing in modern culture only when it has some important news to bring us about our human future, when it is really concerned about the world's tomorrows. If it has nothing to do with the future, it is properly and understandably dismissed as irrelevant. Christianity must learn again to take up the burdens of humankind for a better future. Christians who live by hope are on their journey with a passion for the future. And this places us as Christians at odds with any form of thinking which accepts the world as it is. The status quo is not what is meant to be, no matter how good it seems. And in 1 Peter 3:15, we read our charter as Christians: "Be ready always to give an answer to anyone who demands from you an accounting for the hope that is in you." How would we go with that? If someone said, "What is the hope that is within you?" What would you say? Karl Bratton writes further, "Hope is at the heart of existence." And the German philosopher Ernst Bloch, in his magisterial 3-volume work, The Principle of Hope, says that where there is life, there is hope, and where there is hope, there is religion. And Karl Bratton adds to that and says, where religion becomes total hope, there is Christianity. A total hope, then, is founded on the arrival of the absolute and finalising future of humankind in history. That is the message of Christianity. This hope does not direct our attention away from the world in which we live, but rather towards the perfect image of humanity in the person of Jesus. Hope is always on the outlook for something new, and will not model the future on the past and the present. Christian hope is always oriented towards the future. Hope, then, has always been a central theme within the Christian spiritual tradition. References to hope are dotted throughout the Old Testament and the New Testament. Hope in the Old Testament is often linked to the expectation that desires would be fulfilled, and the loss of hope is considered as a serious circumstance. The wisdom writer in Proverbs says this: "Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a longing fulfilled is a tree of life." And in the biblical writings, we can deduce some of the characteristics of hope. First, hope has something to do with endurance, with waiting, with persistence. And second, hope has protective qualities, most likely for the mind. For St. Paul in 1 Thessalonians talks about wearing the hope of salvation as a helmet. And third, the loss of hope can leave us emotionally troubled, as Proverbs reminded us. Jürgen Moltmann, in his book Theology of Hope, claims that the authentic Christian perspective on life is oriented towards the future. He argues that God is God with future as his essential nature. And genuine Christianity for Moltmann is not concerned with doctrinal orthodoxy, but rather with an expectant, ever-emerging view of the future based on the ongoing power and activity of Jesus Christ. And according to the German theologian J. Piper, the two enemies of Christian hope are presumption and despair. Presumption arises when we're impatient for the arrival of the promised future, and despair is the anticipation of the non-fulfillment of God's promises. For most of us, then, we would include a positive mental outlook in any list of important features of mental health and well-being. It is surprising that it has taken the helping professions until recently to explore the nature and function of hope. We can go back to 1963, where the psychologist Paul Prussia lamented, "Most psychological textbooks do not even carry the words hope or hoping in their index or chapter headings." And Karl Menninger in 1959 was one of the first to articulate the importance of psychiatrists inspiring hope in their patients. And a little later, in 1973, the noted psychiatrist Jerome Frank emphasised the importance of hope in psychological recovery. And since then, there's been much literature written, mainly from the areas of nursing and psychotherapy, on the topic of hope. The stories then of the first Christmas and this season of Advent are about the present as well as what happened in the past. But they also pull us into the future. Marcus Borg tells the story from his childhood. Raised a Lutheran, he is at home with his mother in the days before Christmas, and he sings the Christian hymn, "Joy to the World." He sings the second line, "The Lord has come." His mother gently corrects him. She says, "No, the words aren't 'the Lord has come.' The words are, 'the Lord is come.'" The little boy was puzzled. Surely Christmas is about the coming of Jesus a long time ago. 2,000 years ago, he has come. Years later, as an adult, Marcus Borg realised that his mother was right. Christmas was about the coming in the present, the realisation of the messianic hope of the Lord who came long ago in the past, but Jesus comes again now in the present and will continue into the future. So each Advent season, Christians relive ancient Israel's yearning and hope, and we together embrace at this time the fulfilment of that hope, as through Advent and Christmas we bring the past into the present. Our blessing. Divine Present, who comes as the disturbing comforter, shatter the rigid preconceptions of our minds and hearts. Give us the grace to welcome your coming, to trust beyond where we can see, to have hope in the midst of chaos, to learn from our mistakes, to accept your forgiveness, and to walk steadfastly in the way of gospel gladness. Amen.